Just let me hear some of that rock and roll music, any old way you choose it.
Hello, this is Katie with Vintage and Vinyl, and I'll be spinning some rockin' 50s records every week here on my channel, as well as sharing some cool Coca-Cola collectibles and other neat vintage finds. Stay tuned! Hey guys, this is Katie with Vintage and Vinyl, back with another great video for you today. We are in chapter 11 of Katie and Her Camera, and guys, we are getting to the end of this book. There is not much left, so I am very excited to keep reading and find out more cool details. There is just so much happening in this book, and it's really, really fun. So I can't wait to see if Katie gets a job or not on a small town paper and what happens with Katie and Paul. Lots of good information I know is going to be in this chapter. So I hope you guys will stick around for that. But please do not forget to check out the calendar that's circulating on Instagram. It is on Angela Marksberry's page and my page. Angela is the one that's so kind to create the calendar so we can all keep track. And there are lots of great events happening on YouTube this week. So please look for the calendar and try to get to everything you can. Okay, so let's jump into chapter 11. Newspaper Job at Milford, Chapter 12. Katie set her suitcase on the floor and looked forlornly around her new room. It was clean, it was spacious, and it was aggressively cheerful with its flowered wallpaper, yellow bedspread, and curtains. But depression settled in like a cloud around her. She thought of her cozy, charming room at home and half wished she had never taken this job in Milford. On Your Own seemed less inviting than she had once fancied. Under an ancestral portrait in a room of a rococo gilt frame, the brassy double bed jutted out gigantically into the middle of the room. Across from it was a big dolly-embellished chest of drawers. Near the window stood a small desk on spindly legs, a misfit in the room, imported with a straight-back chair from the living room. There was an easy chair in the corner of the room, and behind it the door to an enormous closet. Well, Katie squared her shoulders, picked up her suitcase, and opened it on the bed. She was beginning a new phase of life here, and she might as well do it with good grace. A pile of lingerie went into one drawer of the chest, slippers down to the side of the bed, housecoat, dresses, and suits into the closet, sweaters, scarves, handkerchiefs, and stockings. Her mother was sending a carton with more clothes, some books, and a couple of her favorite reproductions to hang up, if she dared remove the old oil painting. The John Martin and the Syrah, Sunday on the Grande Jatte, would look very odd combined with that portrait. It was just that too much had been happening all at once, Katie decided. It was like moving into a vacuum after the crescendo of activities which had ended the school year, making her severance from campus life more poignant than she had expected. Election to 2 honorary societies had seemed almost anticlimactic after a brief spell of campus celebrity. The Minnesota Daily had interviewed her, and the Minneapolis Sunday paper had reprinted photographs from her life story, with a paragraph about Katie and the photograph of her. It was astonishing how many people suddenly knew her and wanted to know her better, students and faculty alike. She took the joshing from her professors good-naturedly, and despite her jokes about it with her old friends, she was secretly rather pleased to find herself sought after outside of her own circle. New men began to call regularly for dates, among them a daily columnist, a football player, a psychology instructor. She was invited to music hours and convocations to symphonies and the artist course and the senior prom. She took it lightly, liking her new friends without being impressed by the flurry of attention. And when it died down, she took it in stride. If that was popularity, she found that it had little meaning for her, except for that her circle of friends was somewhat enlarged. But all this made the transition from her home in Minneapolis to a room in Milford quite abrupt, and she was feeling lonely for friends and family, even while she unpacked her suitcase. "Miss Owens, Miss Owens," Mrs. Colger's gentle voice penetrated to her room. Katie went to the top of the stairs and looked down. Miss Kohler was standing below her with a hand on her banister, short and plump, the personification of a landlady. "Mrs. Owens, there's a phone call for you from Minneapolis." Oh, good. It must be my mother. Katie ran down the stairs to the telephone and found that it wasn't her mother on the wire, but Paul. Her blues vanished instantly. You do things in such a hurry, Paul complained. I was away only 3 days and came back to find a note that you had called to thank me and were leaving right away from Milford. Oh, I was so sorry to leave like that, but everything happened in such a terrible rush. Mr. Bailey wanted me to start at once, and Ralph insisted that we finish the proofs of the book and squared things away so that it was no inconvenience for him. And so, here I am. I'm just settling down in my room. However did you find me? I took the best shortcut and called your mother. Well, how do you like it? Lonesome? Yes, rather. I don't know a soul yet, but Mr. Bailey and my landlord. Once I start work, I'll get acquainted. It's such a small town, and it really shouldn't take very long, especially in a job like this. The townspeople will probably want to look you over first, but you'll find them very friendly, particularly to a reporter. By the way, I called because I'll be down in your neighborhood next Friday for a routine story at the Mayo Clinic. Your mother said she was sending some of your things, and I offered to drop them off at your place. How would you like to join me for dinner and a movie or something afterward? Paul, you have the nicest ideas. Yes, I'll be free Friday, and I'd love to see you. Good, I'll be there around 7. And bring along your paper. You should have an issue out on Thursday. Katie went humming back to her room. A date with Paul was something to look forward to. In the middle of following the nightgown into a drawer, she stopped with a frown. Could her mother have suggested that Paul stop to see her? Maybe it wasn't his idea at all. Perhaps he was just being obliging. No, she gave her head a pony shake as if to toss off an unwelcome thought. Why did she always look for a fly in the ornament? That couldn't be the reason, because Paul had called her mother and must have had the idea of going out in the first place. Milford was a pleasant town, its streets fringed with elms dripping down from a hill. The main street, with an office and store building, stretched at the right angles from the highway to the railroad station. Along the street, Katie walked to work after breakfast, passing a general store, the grocery, the drugstore, the bowling alley, a movie theater, and a couple of cafes, the post office and a city hall, the bank, a barber shop, and a beauty parlor. Next to the firehouse was a library on its second floor. Open afternoons, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., the sign notified her, was the hardware store, basement in which the paper was located. Inside, at a desk facing the counter, a red-haired girl stopped typing and glanced up. You're Mrs. Owens, she said with assistance, and got up to meet Katie smiling. I'm Barbara Bailey, and you can call me Barb. Everyone does, and please don't say, look like the high school girl. I graduated a year ago. Here's a locker for your hat, coat, purse, sweater, or whatnot. Gosh, what a handsome purse. It's a tote bag, isn't it? Katie laughed at the spite of her words. Thank you. Yes, it is. It really carries everything, even notebooks and camera films and gadgets. How did you know who I was the minute I walked in? And call me Katie, won't you? You're not used to small towns, are you? Everyone knows you're coming, and there aren't any other new faces in town, so you had to be Katie Owens. Barb conducted Katie into a series of little offices and niches. The roomiest was for Mr. Bailey and his roll-top desk full of pigeonholed papers. There was a cubbyhole for Katie with an office typewriter, a desk, and a work table, just off the mat room, which held mat racks and a huge bay of books for the Metro newspaper service. There was a large storeroom for paper, piled in great heaps on the floor, and stock for posters and miscellaneous items from church programs to wedding invitations. Then there was the main office, where Barb was a receptionist, typist, classified ad taker, and general handyman. Tom and Phil aren't in today, said Barb, leading her into the presentation room with its heavy fumes of ink and bottled gas, and the floor littered with metal type scraps. There are printers, but there wasn't any poster work or anything to keep them busy today. They'll come in tomorrow to run off the church programs and start setting up the paper. Perfectly at home and offhand among the big machines, Barb moved around a room like a groom in a stable of horses, patting each machine affectionately as they went, chatting explanations. There was the linotype machine to print the paper, others to trim it, punch it, fold it in, and address it. Then there was a half-hand fed machine for printing posters and small jobs, and still others that tumbled right out of Katie's mind. "I can see you've learned a lot," said Katie, with respect in her voice. "You'll have to coach me about some of your practices here, I guess." "Dad will train you himself, but I'll be glad to tip you off to any nods and ends of things that come up. There's Dad now in the front office." Mr. Bailey strolled in, relaxed and unhurried. "Hello, Mrs. Owens. I hear you're comfortably settled at Mrs. Kohler's. It was awfully good of you to join us on such short notice." He rumped Barb's hair passing. "Suppose you come into my office. Barb, Roy is bringing over a piece about Grange that I want to see right away, and we'll talk over your assignments and the weekly schedule." "What a live wire your daughter is," commented Katie, following him into the office. Mr. Bailey permitted himself a gratified smile. "She burns up a lot of energy and really loves the paper and the work. Well-inked veins she has. The only trouble is that she won't believe there is anything much to learn in college. She's quick to catch on all kinds of newspaper angles. In fact, she's the only one who is keen on using more local photographs and really has a good mind for it. But I can't make her understand that she lacks the kind of background and perspective that a college education can provide. Besides, she ought to get away from home for a couple of years." "Well, she'll have to learn about herself someday." He looked quizzically at Katie. "I beg your pardon for troubling you with family affairs, but your interest beguiled me. If I may say so, you'll discover that your sympathy continues a journalistic asset around here." Then he tuned his attention to Katie's training. First, he handed her a stack of newspapers. "This is homework," he said. "The best way to learn our setup is by studying some random samples. Here are the papers from several different months, featuring the state fair, elections, county activities, weather, crises, cops, and so on. You'll find almost nothing but state or local news. Our subscribers read the city dailies for the world news, and we concentrate on matters of local interest. We have correspondents to keep us posted on nearby areas, and we often get contributions from articles and organizations like the Grange, the American Legion, the schools, the 4-H clubs, and so on. It's good public relations for them, and they don't fuss too much if we edit their pieces or hold them over a week or two. You're planning to have lunches and dinners out, I suppose?" Katie nodded yes. "Then tonight you'll have a chance to meet some of the key people in town. The librarian, the teachers, the county agent, and the veterinarian, and a few others. I don't believe I have to caution you not to be aggressive about getting acquainted and to let them take the initiative. Most of us like to feel that we're befriending you, not that you're out to get the dope on us." He went on to outline the work schedule. The bulk of the copy was in by Monday night. The next few days were usually spent in rewriting and doing layouts. The paper went to press on Thursday. When Katie had any spare time, she would do general office work, take display ads and classified ads, and follow up on any ideas she should get stories about. "I hope you'll really make use of your photography," he added. "We have an old speed graphic around, but I understand that you have your own camera and would prefer to use that. We'll supply you with film and darkroom chemicals and paper, and we're clearing out a little closet which you can use as a darkroom here. Oh, one more thing. You're not expected to absorb everything at once. Don't be embarrassed about asking questions. Curiosity is the trademark of a good reporter. Now, for a start, I'd like you to meet Mrs. Hausman, the county clerk. She can give you any leads from time to time on legal matters that are in the field. And besides, she knows every soul in town, and more or less everything that goes on." In the courthouse down the street a block, Katie found Mrs. Hausman. She was a stoutly corseted woman, busy at her typewriter with legal forms. "On the job so soon?" Mrs. Hausman's gray eyes were candidly appraising like Barb, and she knew at once who Katie was when she walked into the office. "Bob always starts his reporters off here. Figures I can tip them off to anything going on in town." Sorry, nothing much doing today. Only thing is Mrs. Asgard is suing her husband again for divorce. I'll figure it will take them about 2 weeks or so to make up. Suing again? Repeated Katie, baffled. You mean she does this regularly? Out came the story of the Italian girl that Las Asgard met while he was in the army. A nice child, Mrs. Hausman assured her, but a little too full of fire and temperature for her handsome, placid husband. The town verdict was that Lucia Asgard simply liked a spice of drama and the excitement, and threw an occasional fit of jealous rage, which bewildered her easygoing husband, but satisfied her emotional needs and ended in reconciliation. I dare say we wouldn't tolerate such behavior in a local girl, Mrs. Hausman acknowledged, but because it's Lucia, I guess we just regard it as a good show and count on Lucia's patience to outlast her traumas. Katie perilled Mrs. Hausman's readiness to chat into a discussion of divorce. No, the only divorce in this town was 30 years ago, when the judge's wife ran off with a school teacher, and then into more personal channels like Mrs. Hausman's hobby of rummaging. Katie left feeling more as if she had made a friend than done any work. Back in the newspaper office, she stopped at Barb's desk and shrugged her shoulders. No story today, she says, barring a divorce suit. Barb nodded. That would be Lucia's. No, that's old stuff. Katie mulled over an idea that had occurred to her on her way back. I was wondering about another thing. Did you ever do a story on those wives from abroad and how they met their husbands and so forth? Or are there not enough people in town to warrant a story? Barb leaned back in her chair. The idea is interesting, but I doubt whether, well, come to think of it, maybe there are enough. There's Pete's Irish wife, and Tom Briggs married a Polish girl, and Jim Brady's bride is a darling Chinese girl who worked in the airlines office when he was a pilot. And there's Vivian Olsen. She's engaged to a French engineer she met during her first year of study abroad. Would you want to include the reverse? Say, it really does sound exciting. Let me think about it for a few minutes and I'll jot down some names for you. Meantime, here's a piece from the county agent and one from the Grange that Dad wants you to rewrite. Fine, I'll start now. It was Thursday night before Katie had time to think about her date with Paul. And then she was too tired to even do more than remind herself to put out the black halter neck dress with the barreloo. And the paper was my first byline, she thought sleepily. Well, guys, that is it for chapter 11. Whoa, there was some saucy stuff in this chapter. That divorce suit, holy cow, for the 50s. Wow, wow, wow. That is crazy. So I cannot wait to see what is going to happen in the next chapter. I am betting that Katie and Paul are going to get together. I really hope they do. That date sounds so exciting. I would love a movie and dinner. He's really doing a good job there, picking out some great things for them to do. So I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did, and will stay tuned for more saucy details next week. And I hope you will follow the calendar and connect with everybody that you can this week. Support them all, and of course, be kind. Well, that's all I have for you with Katie and her camera, so I hope you will stay in, stay safe, and binge YouTube.
That's why I go for that rock and roll music. Any old